uncensored. Welcome to Hauntoverse Uncut. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Hauntoverse Uncut. I am, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois, joined once again by my good friend Brian Bass from Nashville, Tennessee. And tonight we have a very good topic that I think anyone that truly loves theme park haunts is going to love this topic, because it's all about Halloween Horror Nights, and specifically we're going to try and get into Halloween Horror Nights number 25 down in Orlando, the 25th anniversary, the one we've oh my, are you okay, Brian? I just noticed. Oh, you got me.
I think I'll be all right. But oh my gosh, are you okay?
I am. That's just, it's from my previous endeavors today. Got a little stuff all over me. You know how that goes.
Okay, good. But that's taken care of, and we can get back. Sorry to
Yes. Yeah, we are both okay. We are not going to die on the show. So anyway, we are going to be talking all about Halloween Horror Nights tonight. Now, for the first time ever, I think something weird happened over the summer where a map of Halloween Horror Nights number 25 basically leaked to everyone. Now, there's a lot of people that are in the know about Halloween Horror Nights that you can always find, maybe a few of your friends who have a pretty good gauge of what's going on down in Orlando, where it's not really a surprise if they let you into the circle. So it's not like this is like a closely guarded secret, like you would see with like a roller coaster announcement or something. Those are much more guarded secrets, even though lately it doesn't seem like they are. But
and apparently this is the year that it doesn't matter. Everything's leaked.
Just give it to everyone. Just give them everything they want. Just here you go. But really, this year with Horror Nights, like you said, if you are interested at all in this event, you've probably seen this map already, and you probably have a pretty good idea of what these houses are going to be. So it's, and everything we know thus far, all of the official announcements coming out from the park is basically just reaffirming what we already know. So I think tonight we're going to look at some of these haunts.
Yeah.
And maybe compare this number 25 to years past. I think we should start off with maybe, me having only gone to one of these and really looking forward to number 25, where number 25 was supposed to be my first one that I went to, but I ended up going last year. I was expecting 25 to be this huge event. And we had talked a little bit beforehand that possibly even spilling over into Islands of Adventure. Did not happen, but we do have a pretty sizable event here in comparison to previous years. Wouldn't you say that?
I would have to agree with you. I don't know if it's just the false, like, that hope that you get. You're like, man, they're going to blow it out of the water. 25th, from the fan side and the general public side and, whatever you are, you see the number 25, and it's massive. It's huge. It's crazy that they've been going that long, and you want it to be ridiculous. But the problem is they have to protect themselves as well, because if they did go all out this year, it would easily keep people from like, wow, you know what? Why go for 26? Because 25 was so incredible. They have to keep you interested and keep it going. Now, with that being said, it's still the addition of a ninth house, which is something I've been waiting for since I've started attending, which was in 2009. Ripped from the Silver Screen was my first event, and I think they were already at 8 houses at that point. They'd already added, which was a good amount, even though there are parks and haunts that have more. And I was like, what year they're going to add a haunt like every year from this year on, and that didn't happen, and I really thought for year 20 we were going to see a 9th house, and I was really surprised, and I still kind of hoped for a double park, something they haven't done in a really long time. And Then, of course, we talked about I hoped for Halloween Horror Nights 25. We were going to see the Split Park, something I've just dreamed of going to because I never got to go to that. Even just doing the event at Islands of Adventure, I've just heard so many wonderful things from those years. So, but that being said, I still have to respect the map that we're looking at here and what we do have. 9 houses is great, although as of today, as of tonight, maybe we won't have that 9th house. I'm not sure. I don't know what their plan is, and we can get into that if you follow this event and you haven't heard by the time you're seeing this that there is a licensed property having trouble with the copyright issues, and we're going to see one of 3 things, I guess you could say. I don't think they're going to rebound from this with that house. If you guys remember 2 years ago, there was an incident where they had to throw a house together, and it ended up being House of Horrors. It was originally, I don't even know if it was the same theme. They were building a house in the location where Transformers was going to be built, and apparently due to some miscommunication, I forget the details of it, they had to, during construction, completely stop, and they tore that whole soundstage down and quickly throw together another concept, which that was the year I worked, and I remember my last night of training was the first time that the city gave the permits for them to use the house, and the characters working that house hadn't even seen the inside of it yet. So I don't know if we'll see something like that 2 months out. Are they going to throw a different house together? Clearly they have different concepts that they've played out and haven't made it into the park. So I'm intrigued. I don't know what's going to happen, or they might just scrap it all together and say, hey, 8 houses, that's our normal, it's crazy.
Well, since we're already here,
we're looking at a good year.
Yeah, well, since we're already here, we might as well start with that topic. That a lot of people, yesterday people were, questioning what house it was going to be. Today, some reports are coming out.
Yeah.
Our good friend Coast and East, he's pretty confident that the house is going to
over there.
Yeah, he's pretty confident that the house is Scream. No one really knows for sure. There's been obviously no official announcement, but it does make sense that one of the things Horror Nights likes to do is with their licensed properties that, are called LPs, with their licensed properties, they like to try and mix the different versions of that story together. So, you might see a movie and a TV show combined into one. Out in Hollywood last year, you really saw it with the Predator house, that they tried to mix in different elements from all the different movies. So if you think of Scream, well, Scream's coming back on MTV right now. MTV's licensing this. They obviously are probably going to want their version in this house. And if they're coming out and trying to do movie scenes. I said if they're going to try and do movie scenes, then it's like that's not what MTV's going to benefit from out of that. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and that's didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was going to say, and the MTV version is fairly different from the Scream that I grew up and loved. I remember when that movie came out, that truly was one of the first really scary movies. The chair coming through the window is just, I remember the first time literally like jumping out of my seat, seeing, a scene in a theater, and it broke a lot of rules and was very gory, it was crazy. And the big guy behind that is Ghostface. I mean, that mask is, now synonymous with Halloween. When you think of Halloween masks, you think of Michael Myers, Jason, and Scream, Ghostface. And he said, no, we don't want to do that. And it was kind of hard for me. And I've only seen one episode. I want to get more into it. It's fine. It's a good fright, but there's that kind of that nostalgia for me that I was like, oh, you kind of took this way. And so, especially if their concept kind of parallels both of those things and you have this product that's not really relative to that style, I guess there could be some, confrontation. Again, all speculation. I trust Pat East. I think Coast and East, I think he is a very reliable source, and he's very on top of all of this as well. So, and honestly, if you haven't seen Screamscape put up a bit about it and how apparently Mike Aiello was sent over to the UK in the summer and was supposed to make a maze announcement in front of a live crowd, but he didn't. And that led a lot of people to think that American Werewolf in London was the title that was in trouble, which would be obviously very detrimental to the event, as that's one of the best houses they've ever created. We're all very excited to see it back. And this even continues on the point that we've said, we've had that, like you said, we've had the map since the beginning of summer almost. Yeah. Yet Halloween Horror Nights have made almost no announcements. You know, they've been quieter than I feel like they've ever been almost. I don't know. It's definitely on the same track of running into, hey, maybe there is a problem with the house, and that's why they're keeping this quiet.
And you know, the bigger issue is, you know, it's not only just the house not being there. It's, you know, we're, you know, almost a month out from this event. There's other things that need to get done. Maps, T-shirts, you know, just general merchandise. And Halloween Horror Nights likes to make at least one T-shirt with all the houses on it. So if you've already printed these, you're in a bind here. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if they're just going to throw more money at the problem. Like that's sometimes money tends to solve things.
Yeah, it does create a complication, as we're hearing, or as you can read, or, you know, if you can find on forums. It sounds like the problem does go high up, and it's a lot of people are in some you know, tough situations right now. And like Annie just said, I mean, it doesn't just affect, oh, what do we do with this house that we promised? It's going to be printed places. It's going to be promoted places. I mean, you have things that, you know, sometimes they'll do promotions at local restaurants or fast food chains that you've already sent this stuff out for, and they could have Scream printed on cups, you know, or it's really quite a big problem. So it's going to be very fascinating to see how it's handled over the next 2 months. Honestly, I hope for the best. I hope it comes through. I hope they figure it out. Everybody prevails, and we have a Scream house, because I think it could be terrifying. Last year, Halloween was one of the scariest houses. So I hate to see it go.
You know, let's look at the houses that have been announced already. That there have been a few. The first one was the Freddy versus Jason house. The one thing I heard, and this might be out of Hollywood, because they tend to announce the ones that are going to be shared first, between the two, parks. But Freddy versus Jason, that at the end of the haunt, like it's going to be a battle between the two of them. And I've heard that, that story will change depending on when you go through it. But I don't remember which house. Oh. So like the end of the house is the story is gonna change. So one time Freddy's gonna win, one time Jason's gonna win, or maybe you win. I don't know.
Fantastic.
I don't know, but I have heard that. That would be. But I don't know if that's going to be Orlando or Hollywood. But that was definitely in the press release. It might be both of them for all I know. But that's a kind of cool concept.
I mean, honestly, you could pull that off. Yeah, you could totally pull that off at both of them. So that's a great concept.
You know, and it's the classic characters here. And to be honest, it's kind of something that people have been waiting for, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to say, just looking, Freddy vs. Jason 2, when it was first announced, it excited me because I love those two characters. It's classic Halloween. You know, but it was just kind of taken back at first. I was like, because I went back and thought about the movie, and I was like, okay. I mean, it was fun. It's just an action-packed kind of gore fest with two classic characters. But it's one thing that I can't get caught up in my pretentiousness about this, because I don't know what year it was. My least favorite year of Halloween Horror Nights since I've been attending was Walking Dead year, when the whole event was Walking Dead. I hated it. I thought it was a waste of streets. Before we go on, ever since Walking Dead was a haunted house, I walked through it once. I was like, okay, cool. It's like the show. The zombies don't really do much for me. I know they're a classic Halloween staple. But to have Walking Dead this many years, and when you had the whole event dedicated to it, and I remember on a survey one time when we were leaving the park, they asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well was Halloween represented at this event? And did it, was it the spirit of Halloween? And I had to say no. There were scary things, but it was Walking Dead. And so I looking at this map, you have a classic Halloween event. And that's what I think I love most about it, because you're going to have everything. You have the iconic characters. One of the scare zones I'm really excited for is rumored to be Trick or Treaters, which was a horde of characters when they tried the roaming hordes year, and I loved it. I mean, that's that classic kind of haunt that you don't usually get at Halloween Horror Nights that you really get at, Busch Gardens or Cedar Point or Not Scary. Like, that's what it's lacking. And so, I mean, you have an abundance of that right now. And between Freddy vs. Jason, the Anniversary House, which again is a culmination of everything they've done over the last either, I don't know if they're going to do the last 5 years since we just had an Anniversary House, or if they're going to do the whole event. You have Insidious, which is the paranormal scary stuff, the zombies, the serial killers, and then the classic monsters from, if they do the all-night dine-in scare zone that's rumored. I mean, overall, I think this is one of the best Halloween represented years, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that and that maybe takes us into our next debate. Is that's always the balance, with this, and not only balancing Halloween, but also balancing the licensed properties versus the original houses. That I think it's fair to say that hardcore fans really like the original houses because you really get into the mind of the creators. They get to have complete freedom to do whatever they want, and they're good at what they do. So it's not like they don't know what. It's not like they're bad at it. They're really good at what they do at both Hollywood and Orlando. So you want them to get that creative freedom. And people always like to complain that, their hands are tied with the licensed properties, especially things like, the Walking Dead has been the talk of the town for the last few years. And you just said the entire Walking Dead event, and maybe that kind of put a whole bunch of people off. But ever since then, even the one house infuriates people. And we thought this might be the year that it was gone. Because last year the contract was actually up with Walking Dead, and it's right back again, and people are going crazy again. To be honest with you, I tried watching Walking Dead. I watched the first episode. I did not like where the story was going. The whole I'm trying to save my family from the zombie story is just done to death. Like, pardon my pun. Yeah. And I just didn't get into it. But walking through the house, I actually thought that the Walking Dead house last year was one of my more favorite haunts, to be honest with you. I thought what they did in there, and keep in mind, I have no idea what the story is because it was based on season 4. Yeah. I watched half of the first episode, so I had no idea. But they still found ways. Obviously, there were rooms in there that I'm just like, okay, whatever. This is obviously for the fans. But there's other things in there. The one room I clearly remember is you're walking, there's stuff on the one side, on your left side, then they had the row of bushes, and the zombies would just pop out of the bushes randomly, and it was a threefer.
Great scene.
So you'd have the first zombie pop out, you're like, oh, I kind of expected that. Then the next one would pop out, and you're like, okay, that guy got me. And then the third one popped out, and it's like, what the?
The third, yep. It would infuriate me because I hated that house so much because I don't want Walking Dead here anymore. And so I kind of hate giving it credit when it's a good house. And that bush scare, both times I walked through that house, because I went through it 2 times in a row just to, get through it before the line got crazy. And we had the benefit of it being in the soundstage, so no light leak aside from the facade scene. And that was one of the best sections of the house for sure, and got me both times, and I was so angry because I was like, I don't want this to be a house anymore. But I will have to give them credit. And the one, and we'll go back to this argument because I told you before the show started, I love this event. It looks great, and the hardest part for me looking at this map and the last few maps is just all of the licensed property or licensed material, whatever you want to call it. I mean, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be having this problem with Scream right now. It wouldn't be a situation. So you do have that, and again, it's rare, it's whatever, but still, I like the original houses because you're going to see stuff you've never seen before, or them take a story and put it in a way that you could have never expected. And the detail, and again, you go back to the days, I'm going to get down a few rabbit holes here, but I'm a little everybody always says, oh, like the joke that Cosinese we always say, like, oh, the first year was the best year, or whatever year you didn't go, that was the best year, or the first 5 years were the best years, whatever. And I do miss in the day of original houses when that was the bulk of the houses aside from random events. I mean, the way that they would release, and again, because it's been 180 this year, I mean, we've heard nothing. Everything's been leaked, and they've announced like 3 houses, and they're what everybody expected. But you used to have these website games, and you used to have these stories. And one of my favorite years, right before they decided to do away with all that, I think it was right after the Comcast merger, I don't remember, they had, I think it was Lady Luck. And you had games to unlock clues like you did every year, but if you did not get them right, you got kicked off the website for an hour or two. And that just was awesome to me. That intrigue, I mean, it was such a great concept. It would make me so angry. I remember being in class and, like, I had my timer set so I could go because I was just obsessed with figuring out what these stories were. And you'd get further and further in the games and figure out this house, oh, my gosh, this is going to be a winter-themed house with some kind of crazy, scary ghost, thing. And then you'd lose in the last round and, like, you're banned for an hour, like that kind of stuff. And then now you just get Facebook announcements, and it's kind of like, okay, there's not really that whole heart to it. And I feel like that's how it is with these, licensed properties. They're like Freddy vs. Jason. And they did try with Insidious, they do the generic movie and old maze footage that doesn't really match up unless they borrow from an already used house. But it is hard to see all the licensed property because every house, I'd have to really think about this, but I think every year I've been, I think every house that's been my favorite house of the event was an original, with the exception of, I think, Cabin in the Woods might have been my favorite. I'd have to go back and look at the house. I can't think of it off the top of my head. And I don't know if it's because that heart is in it, and now more than ever when they only get 2 or 3 an event, they just pour everything they can into it. And, but again, like you said, the benefit of licensed properties, Walking Dead fans get to go in and live the scenes. And trust me, I had that with Cabin in the Woods. Would not have been my favorite house if it wasn't for seeing the movie. You got in the elevator scene and you got in the cube scene. You freaked out because it meant that much to you. So it's definitely, I'm torn on how I feel about it. I like the idea of it. I just hate that we're now in an era where there's more licensed property than there is original houses, especially at Hollywood. I don't even know if Hollywood has an original house this year.
Yeah, and the flip side to that is the licensed properties, it brings people out. It really does. Like, I would not have been at Halloween Horror Nights number 24 if it wasn't for Alien vs. Predator. I wouldn't have gone. There was no way. There you go. I mean, it's like I went to the event just to go through that house. It wasn't even a question. And so you look at it, and it's like, well, how many more people are like that? Like this, when you start having these licensed properties, like it appeals to a broader base of fan. Like even if you get beyond The Walking Dead, like I understand The Walking Dead is like one of the top-rated TV shows, on the air right now. But if you even get beyond that, things like Insidious, things like Freddy versus Jason, Insidious is one of the biggest properties out there. Last year with the Purge, that they're coming out with a 3rd movie now. And then like this year or last year, you could do a little throwback with the Halloween, and this year is the throwback with the Freddy versus Jason, and even the Scream for all those 90s kids out there that really love Scream. Now you're appealing to them. It's just like, the argument is that it brings people to the event. It's not just, a gimmick. And for the most part, I think, the creative direction is actually pretty good in those houses. That some of them fall flat. I'm not going to lie. The From Dusk Till Dawn house last year was interesting for reasons other than being scary, I think.
Yeah. To be fair, though, when I went through that house, because I went towards the end of the event, everybody had told me that, and that ended up getting the best scares out of me because, again, just like any kind of, a movie or a show, whatever expectations can completely ruin it. And so all I had heard was this isn't scary. This house isn't scary. It's just kind of cool sets and, really, really pretty women. And I was like, all right, whatever. And so it had a 10-minute wait. So I was like, oh, let's just walk through it real quick. I hear it's terrible. And when I put my guard down that much, because I'm underestimating that it's still a Halloween Horror Nights haunted house, that I hit the ground in the very first scene because I assumed nothing happened with the figures dancing behind the curtains. I was like, oh, this is what people are talking about. And then she popped, So I will say, even as a weak house, if you have that expectation, you just completely let your guard down. And I thought it was funny too. To go back to what you said, first off, before we get to the irony of my argument here, I mean, there's nothing better. You literally said a licensed property house got you to the event, and that's all the corporate and all the uppers of Universal are going to see and that means money. And with things like, AVP was a very specific, property, but Walking Dead and Purge and stuff that, globally has gone viral or, whatever, that people will go out to see that. They're like, dude, that movie was terrifying, or this show is amazing. I want to go live that. I want to go see it. And it's ripped from the silver screen was my first year, which is ironic because that was a lot of licensed property the first year. I didn't go on a first year where there was a ton of original houses. You had what? You had Chucky, Dracula, Frankenstein, Saw, The Spawning Wolfman, and then Silver Screams, which had a bunch of different iconic characters in it. And I loved it. Saw was honestly, when I first heard there was a Saw house, I was like, there's no way I'm missing Halloween Horror Nights because of the Saw house. And it was amazing. I loved it because I love the Saw series. So it is, as much as I want to be pretentious about, original houses are the coolest and most creative, you kind of go for those things that you recognize. But one thing that makes me a little, weary of that also is I can go pay $8 down the street at my local haunt to see Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. Yeah. And then I can go 20 minutes further down the street and see those same characters again because every local haunt is going to have those characters, usually.
Yeah, and obviously they're not, they're not paying for them, but they're going to be in there because they're so – it's just so entrenched in our Halloween culture now that you're going to see them. And where they really win these licensed houses is that they try and put you in that movie. Like you were saying, you're in different scenes. And that's where you win in these houses. But then when you get a situation like allegedly the Scream situation where – the corporates want to put you into what they want to put you into, then that Scream house doesn't – you're selling the name, but people are going to go through it and going to be like, wait a minute, that's not the Scream I remember. What did they do there? If I wanted to see that, I could just go down the block, because how many people – you said you watched one episode. I don't even know what day it's on. It's kind of like what's the point at some reason? Like I understand the corporate idea. Yeah. But from the perspective of selling the event, that's why Universal allows them to kind of push the envelope sometimes to integrate the old stuff because Universal knows that the old stuff is going to sell the event. Maybe another interesting topic to talk about here is the return of an American Werewolf in London because we really haven't seen this happen before. Like we've seen sequels. We've never seen a complete return to basically the same storyline. So what do you think we're going to see in that? Yeah,
I honestly, I don't know. I was so confused, honestly, when I saw the announcement, and I had to look it up. I was like, American Werewolf in London, American Werewolf. Was there another one are they just doing the second one? Like what? And I was like, no, I think we're getting the same house. And I wasn't mad. I didn't care because I thought that was one of the best houses they've done in a really long time. Yet I'm infuriated that Walking Dead has returned 4 times with completely brand new stories and concepts. But you give me the exact same house, and that's the difference. When it's a good house, because don't get me wrong, obviously I love American Werewolf in London way more than I love Walking Dead. But when it was first announced, a lot of us were pretty skeptical about it. We're like, oh, yeah, that could be kind of scary, kind of cool. It'll be interesting. And then it ended up being terrifying. When those werewolf scenes happened, I mean, it was some of the scariest stuff they've done. Those puppets were unbelievably perfect for how they were, So I don't know if they're just going to improve upon that, if they're just going to, I hope it's not just a cheap way to get a ninth house, because hey, we have this old set lying around and we have these old props. It's the 25th year. Let's just bring one house back. And I still wouldn't even be too mad, because if it was going to be a house, it'd be American Werewolf in London, or maybe Hades, or Nightingales, or something that people loved and thought the houses, were absolutely iconic and amazing. So I do think it's weird, because that's a Hollywood move. Hollywood brings back the same houses. Every other park, that's I guess another point I want to make. Something that kept me coming back to Halloween Horror Nights Orlando over and over again was 8 brand new houses every single year. No one else was doing that. That's crazy. I mean, standalone haunts don't do that. It's insane. So I don't want to say it cheapens it, but it might a little bit. I don't know. I guess I'll have to wait and see.
It's just such a weird move, because like maybe if the haunt was 5 or 10 years ago and people were still talking about it.
Yeah.
But American Werewolf in London was at Horror Nights 23. So we're talking about a 1-year timeout from it. So it's a very strange return.
Yeah.
Especially given the breadth of things that they've done over the 25 years, to choose that one to return. Obviously it's a money thing, because the puppets are there,
Sorry, I want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, but it's true. You make a good point, because as you're saying, out of all the what's happening on your screen? Sorry, you were just strobe lighting. It's freaking me out.
The black light's gonna die, I think.
Yeah. All right. What's the name of that stupid house? Dead Exposure. If there's one house that I could go back and visit, and the one house that's talked about that it was the house to see, and they tried it a little bit. They tried to, take that concept with House of Horrors, and it didn't really work that well. Great setup, but it just wasn't. That's the house I wanted to see come back. And because you're right, American Werewolf in London was, 2 years ago maybe?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
23.
It's not like there's been stronger houses. 23. There's been stronger houses that they could have brought back that would have made way more sense to have a return as a full, it's the same house. But again, as we both said, it could just be, hey, this was a great house, and we still have these puppets left over. So.
Yeah, and I think it does. I think there's a heavy financial component. Yeah, because Dead Exposure, Horror Nights 18. So you're talking about a good amount of time there between, if they were to bring that back, 7 years, it's a good amount of time. It works out for me, to be honest with you, because all I hear is about how great American Werewolf in London was. I didn't go to 23, so now I get to experience for the first time. So I'm a winner. But like you said, a lot of people, the attraction of Horror Nights is it's new every year. Why would I go out there, every year and spend the money? For me, I'm in Chicago. When I go out there, I'm talking about at least a $500 to $700 investment when I go to this thing. Just with airfare and rental cars and hotels, and that's not even getting into the tickets and stuff. It's a little bit of the tickets, but for me, the attraction is, and what brings me back is the fact that it's all brand new, where I don't feel that same desire to go back. Look at Cedar Point. Cedar Point changes one haunt every year. If I didn't love that park as much as I do, there would be no attraction for me to go back. There's a lot of times I go back and don't even do all the haunts. If the lines are unfavorable, or if the queue lines are not in my favor that evening, then I won't go through the haunt, and I'll be like, who cares? I've been through it already. But Horror Nights, completely different in the fact that that's one of the main selling points, and you wonder, well, if this does well and people talk it up, are we going to see this more? Because I don't think people have the aversion to American Werewolf in London because it was so good. I think the issue is will the park do this more in 26, 27, 28 to save money? Which is always the bottom line for everything in life. So interesting ideas there.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about the streets a little bit? Oh, well, finish what you were going to say. Finish what you were going to say first.
No, I would say, it's true. And we don't want to encourage them, and that's what the bummer about Walking Dead was. It did so well that it just grew, it just blew up, and they were just so desperate to try something new, which you have to respect. They've been doing this for 25 years, and all of a sudden we had a Walking Dead event. We're like, whoa, too far. And that's something I don't want to see happen in the next few years is houses coming back. But then also, that's something I complain about every year is Hades, Nightingale, Werewolf in London, and Cabin in the Woods. I wish they were hero haunts. I would go through them every single time I went to the park and absolutely love it. So there is that when they do a house that good, it almost is unfortunate that they only exist in life for a month and a half because they're unbelievable experiences. So, but it's that too much of a good thing taken away. And yeah, I think it does. I like your point that for you didn't get to go and you got to hear about how good it was. So now you get to see it.
Now here's a question for you. And how would you feel if they limited it to one house a year? That they make a statement, every year we will bring back one of the fan favorite houses. If you're going to do 9 haunts and do one of them, so you're used to the 8, and now this extra one is going to be a returning haunt. Do you think people would get really upset by that idea?
I don't think so. Again, I can't. Fanboys, again, general public probably wouldn't care unless they marketed it correctly. Like, hey, we're bringing back every year. We're going to bring back one of our best houses from the last, because I mean, what they have 25, at least to choose from that were solid, amazing houses each year. Let alone the years where you had 3 or 4 houses that were solid. But when I went through on the 20th year. What leads me to one of my most anticipated houses this year is the anniversary house. That was almost my favorite house that year. I think Hades was that year and what beat it out. But anniversary house, I mean, I went through it over and over and over and over again because they've created so many brilliant ideas and so many brilliant haunts that I would love to see a fan favorite every single year, especially because I started late in the game. While I've been going for 7 years, they've been doing this for 25. And there have been some incredible concepts that I just get to hear yeah. of and see really old pictures and maybe, if we're lucky, a video clip from. So yeah. I don't know how the fans would react overall. I feel like they'd be happy because all they do is talk about how good the old houses used to be. So, and then I'm sure they'd bring them back and be like, oh, this isn't exactly how it was. But I think it's a great idea. And if they want to do 9 and have one as just a carbon copy, I'm all for it. So with that, I think we can move on to streets. Yeah. So the streets this year are interesting because, going back to the same debate that we've always talked about is the licensed properties versus the original. And last year you had the Purge and you also had the Face Off street, which, like you were saying, was just kind of like a glorified photo op for the most part. Like, is everyone taking selfies in there? Myself included. I'm not gonna lie. I was basically filming people. It was amazing artwork. Yeah. You see our intro. Like, we used a whole bunch of them. Like, it looks nice. It's scenes that are posed. But this year we don't have that. This year it's all. You could argue the trick-or-treaters, are they basing that on the movie or no? I can't tell. That would be awesome if it was based on the movie because I loved it. I think it's going to be, I mentioned at the beginning when I teased that is I think it'll be like the Horde. So the one year that I worked, we had the roaming hordes. You had the warriors and the iniquitous and all that. And one of them was trick-or-treaters. And they might have, I don't even know, I think they were a late edition because they had 2 late editions that year because people were complaining about not enough, street scares. So they added another zombie group, which was based on the 28 Days Later group. I was super jealous because they got to run, which, like, chasing people and running is the best. And then you had the trick-or-treaters, which was literally just every kind of, your classic neighborhood trick-or-treaters. You had witches, you had, like, foxes, you had just weird stuff, but they were creepy. I mean, I loved it. I thought the idea worked really, really well. And I think they ended up being like they had the most fans in the park. I remember they'd come off set and people would give them candy in the park. And they'd be like, oh, what'd you get? I'm like, what? Like, are you kidding me? That's not fair. So I know they worked really well. I do think our photo op this year will be the icons. I imagine that they're going to have an icons in the year 2020. No, in the 20th anniversary, they had the icon street, and it was a mix between a photo op and good scares, and that's what I liked about it, because you had Storyteller and Jack and everybody. I'm not I can't list them all right now. But you had all their sets. They had just sets throughout the street that the icons would be at if you wanted to see them, or if you get invited into one of their scenes, which was very fun. And then they would wander too and scare people, and that's what I think is what I wanted Face Off to be. But they were up on their little pedestals, kind of like what was the year, or what was the theme? The Seven Sins the year before, yes. I think it was, or whatever, 2-3 years ago actually. You had people in the street and people on the pedestals and stuff that were, scaring each other. So I hope we don't just get a photo op, is a long-winded way of saying that for that scare zone.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's always more fun to be interactive and stuff, obviously. But the other places, there's this steampunk, I'll be honest, I've been through a number of different steampunk things now, and I still don't see the attraction. Yep. I think steampunk is a really cool thing to look at. I love the take on costuming, but it never turns out to be scary. Like, that's the thing. It's just people who look cool. I don't get it.
Yeah. And I don't know if this comes from their success with Saws and Steams, which was, I think, the first scare zone that turned into a house. And Saws and Steam's scare zone, I had to agree. The only thing that made it scary for me was the chainsaws. But as far as steampunk goes, again, atmosphere, costume, sets, awesome. Cool. Looks amazing. As far as scary goes, it doesn't really work. Now, the haunted house they did, the Saws and Steam's house, kind of really took that industrial and that theme and turned it into a really kind of screwed up scary story. I mean, the whole concept of that house was very disturbing and had some very unique scares and really cool stuff in it. So I hope it goes that direction, but especially if it's, it's combining one of my most anticipated streets, which was Scary Tales, because I never got to go through a Scary Tales house, and I always heard they were incredible. But if it's going to be Scary Tales meets steampunk, I'm going to wait until I see it, because I just don't see that being scary. Again, I see it cool, but I don't see it, being intense, I guess. The other street is Psychoscare Fall Festival, which they're also doing a Psychoscare body collectors, which sounds cool. But the Fall Festival, what is that going to be? Like, I got nothing. My only hope for that is, because when I saw that, I was like, oh, I really hope it's just like a fall festival gone crazy with crazy people, because it could be like pretty much an adult version of the Trick-or-Treaters is what I'm hoping for, like an insane asylum version. I have to say, though, I think I've been through more Psychoscare houses. I guess maybe Walking Dead at this point, I'd be like, because they bring Psychoscare back every now and again. I think I've been through 3 of them, or 2 of them. This will be the 3rd one, maybe. I don't know. I'm never impressed. I don't know if it's just because it's that whole concept never really blows me away, and it's so easy and overdone throughout the years of traditional haunts and crazy people. The only thing that it holds near and dear to my heart was Psychoscare. The first one I went through was my very first Halloween Horror Nights red button experience. I didn't even know that the button thing existed, and they've done a lot more with those interactive buttons throughout the years, but that was my first one. It was Halloween night. I'd been seeing this stupid red button that was easily could be pushed, and so I was like, dude, I'm going to do it. My friend's like, dude, just push the button. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And just immediate regret. Like, the amount of things that button triggered, it incited a frozen panic fear that I've never had. But between the strobe light, the alarm, the water, the air, the wall dropping, the guy running at me, I mean, it was so overwhelming that it traumatized me. And I always let my friends push the buttons now when I go through houses. So I do have to give it credit for that. But I do hope we see an intense street where maybe they've escaped or something. They're supposed to be having this nice fall festival, and they've kind of just gone crazy. I have no, that one's up in the air. I hope it's utilized well because that's always the biggest scare zone area.
Yeah. And then the last house is All Night Die-In, which is another classic idea that they're bringing back again. So that should be a good one too.
Another great scare zone. They had that out in front of Mel's Die-In the one year, and I personally loved it because you could get pictures with everybody. If you could stop them, it was kind of that. If they're nice enough, they'll stop and get you a picture, and it was uncomfortable. But then it was really cool because you had the old movies playing again. I don't know if they'll do that, but I really loved that idea. So, again, and another encompassing all of the Halloween favorites.
Yeah, and that's in a new zone back there, too. They did not have one back there last year, I don't believe. So it's kind of bridging that.
No, that one's usually – that one's hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. That's one thing this event has always lacked to me is scare zones. I do like this year. I remember one year I went and you could get to Bill and Ted's without going through a scare zone, and I immediately thought that was a missed opportunity. I mean, you shouldn't be able to walk through the park and not see an event, not see a scare zone. So I love when they do it out there, especially when you have the house dump out into the scare zone. They've done that with Walking Dead, and they did that with Zombie Apocalypse and Zombie Mardi Gras or whatever. It just kind of keeps it going. You're out of the house, and then you dump into the scare zone, and you don't get a chance to relax. So, I think it's good, but it still leaves the back half of the park completely dead. And I don't know if you were going to bring this up. I mentioned Bill and Ted's, but do we, that's also something that crazy happened this year. Hollywood losing Bill and Ted's is just another unbelievable blow to me.
And in Hollywood, that's, and they put in the Jabberwockies, which is basically like a dance crew. They have a Vegas show. I was just in Vegas, 2 weeks ago, and they have a show in Vegas, and now they're moving over to Hollywood's Universal for this event. And it's just like, man, Bill and Ted is so good. Like, when I tell you that Bill and Ted sold me on this event last year, like the houses were great, but Bill and Ted sold me on the entire event. Like something that I have to go see.
Yeah, it literally my first year, I didn't know about Bill and Ted's. Like I knew there was a show, I didn't really care about it. I was just there for the houses. And it's same thing. I had almost the most perfect night, but there was something not being, because you have rides, you have haunted houses, you have atmosphere. You just need that one more thing. And Bill and Ted's is it, man. As the first time it ended and the show ended and I got up, I was like, this is the greatest event of all time because this is the best show. These are the best houses. It really – and as my wife would say, it's the only reason to go to Halloween Horror Nights because she hates being scared and she hates haunted houses. But I invite her along with me every time. And one of the things she looks forward to is Bill and Ted. In whatever other show they have. I love Rocky Horror, and I love the whole Rocky Horror experience. So I really wanted that to come back and be here. I was so happy they brought it back last year. But then Bill and Ted's is that other staple. And when I told her that the Hollywood lost one, she was like, "Wow, I probably wouldn't go to the event at that point." So
yeah, it's kind of like it becomes one dimensional. You have the rides. Yeah, you have, the houses, but, it's a lot of the same stuff. And if you're not into the houses, the shows do offer, and I'm sorry, as great as the Jabberwockies may or may not be, they're not going to be Bill and Ted. And it's a shame for why it's a shame for why they got shut down. We talked about that on Uncut way, way, way back when, last year when it happened. And it's just like, you just shake your head. You look at all the stuff that happened last year, and Hollywood had a rough year last year. Let's be honest. They had the Bill and Ted debacle. They had the Purge issue where the girl was offended that she was being called, a slut and all this other stuff. So Hollywood had a rough year last year, but you know what? It boggles my mind, not to bring up this debate again, but it boggles my mind how you go to an event like this and be offended by such things. That you're not offended by going through the haunted house where 65 people are in a simulated murder, but when you're called a bad name, like someone calls you a name and now it's on.
I mean, my two, and I got to bring up my two surprises. In Orlando, I'm amazed Hollywood has more problems with that because A, it's Hollywood, and B, it's not as touristy. It's not as many people. I mean, you go to Halloween Horror Nights and you have kids in strollers and in age groups that shouldn't be there. And so when I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, and everybody's probably going to make fun of me, La Llorona or Ya Llorona, whenever it came over, that was the most anticipated house coming from California to Orlando for me. Everything I'd seen from it looked terrifying. I'd heard it was amazing. But there was a concept and a scene that I was just like, there's no way they're going to do this. This is Orlando. They have way more people visiting, and they're going to get, shut down if people see this. And we got in the house, we started going, and I'm running, I'm jumping, it's amazing. And we round the corner, and all of a sudden on the bridge, and there's flowing water coming down, which was awesome because we were in a sprung house, and they had a flowing creek, which was incredible. And I was like, no, they didn't. And I looked over the bridge, and face down are two children just completely drowned and lifeless floating down the creek. And I flipped out in a good way because of this awful thing. And it was just because it was them keeping their, character and their charisma about the event and about staying true to the story. But yet that's okay in the eyes of the people going through the house. And then you also have the year they brought Rocky Horror. I was like, okay, I'm intrigued by this because there's really offensive material not only in that movie, but what the people say and what we call back. And so I went in and, man, you had fingers flying, you had F-bombs being screamed, you had terrible things being said. And when it came back, I think they brought it back 2 times or 3 times. I don't remember. I think it's on its 3rd time back, right? Mm-hmm. Not this year. I think it's been, I don't know. I remember this last time going. Yes, last year was the 3rd time it had been there for me. And they had kind of toned it down a bit. They were discouraging a lot of the call-outs and some different things, which, again, so it is hard to see. But, yeah, these people come to the event and see stuff like that, but then you go through houses where really terrible things happen, and they're like, and that goes – I mean, that debate goes all the way to – you look at MPAA and movies, and violence is not really rateable. Like, you can say this many F words or have this kind of, romantic love scene, and it'll get an R rating. But this person can die horribly, and there's kind of a gray area there. It's weird, the view on violence and all these other things. And, at the end of it, it's a comedy show. Bill and Ted's is like making fun of everything. How do you – I don't under – that whole situation was so frustrating, and it makes me nervous that, Orlando might entertain that same idea just to avoid – because I don't know if you remember, they were in the news a few years ago for that stupid Obama-Romney epic rap battle, I think it was, and it was hilarious. Who cares if it was one-sided? It's an amusement park comedy show. I can't.
And it drives
like, me crazy.
It does. And Orlando last year came really hard on the people trying to film it. I don't know if that was in response to try to get so that stuff can't hit the media, but. It's just the efforts they went to so that nobody could film that were just epic.
Intense.
It was epic. Like, you had people flying up and down, those stairs, but yet it was still filmed. So,
and that's how they. And I know. People still got away with it. I remember talking to a guy in line one time. He's like, "Yeah, we were in line for. I think we were gonna go see TNA or something at Universal, and I ended up the one guy was a fanboy or whatever, and." He was just like, I'm buying a little remote control drone, and I got these little spy glasses I'm gonna try. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so, just watch the show and enjoy it. Like,
it's not that
don't get me
serious.
wrong. I look for the 2009 Bill and Ted's probably 2 or 3 times a year, because every other year is making it up and gets taken down. And I think that's what Hollywood's problem is they don't really have that strict of a policy. You can find every year of Hollywood's no problem from every different angle. Orlando is the one that they really, harp on not having. So, again, I'm hoping that we don't become this super politically correct event, because at the end of the day, it's a Halloween event. I mean, Orlando got in trouble last year for the sacrifice scene. One of the cooler things they've done in a while. I was really impressed by that. And by the time I got to the event, it was an empty stage. And
a waste of space. And it's funny they tried to spin it, because I did the behind the scenes tour, and they tried to spin it as in, people were reporting on surveys that, they were paying more attention to the show going up on the stage than the interaction in the haunt. I'm like, I think somebody complained. Okay. I wanted to raise my hand and be like, no, somebody complained. That's why you took it out.
Because that's why. To be fair, it was pretty awesome. I mean, they pulled the guts. I mean, it was pretty intense. Like, I understand something, but again, the whole there's warnings. You're coming to a Halloween. Yeah.
How is that more intense? Like, how is that more intense than what you saw in any of the other houses? Like, I just don't get that part. Like, I don't get that part.
I mean, Nightingale was a pretty bad concept in terms of realistic and sad. And it's the most intense haunted house I've ever been through because you took something that was very real, which is war trenches, and then combined it with a very real concept, which is the Nightingale effect, and made the Nightingales terrifying. I mean, there were soldiers die. There were amputated soldiers being killed by these things in a time where people are still sensitive to war, honestly.
Yeah.
And you're walking through the trenches having machine guns shot at you. And I don't think it's true. I heard rumors that it set off some post-traumatic syndrome on some people. And you know what? Whether it's true or not, I honestly could see it happening because I remember when one of them was flying over me and I was running through the house, I turned and the guy just looked at me and said, run, and shot me in the face with his huge machine gun. And it was a pressure, it was a compressed air thing. I mean, it scared me more than anything has ever really scared me because it just was so the culmination of the intensity and then getting blasted in the face with something that you want to say hurt and it didn't because it's air, but it comes out so intense.
Yeah.
That house goes unnoticed. No one says a thing about it.
But the sacrifice is what we got to get rid of.
That's what we got to, and the gay Superman. That's not okay.
That's the line. That's the line in the sand.
That's the line.
That's the line.
Man. So I will say.
Yeah.
I just want to say. I won't go too much into this, but they do Bill and Ted previews before the park opens, and one of them is the whole team member preview. But before that, there's an entertainment preview, and it was amazing how much was cut from the entertainment preview to the employee preview to the regular show. There was a joke, and they try the harder things because you have the true fans who are going to respond, yeah, that's too far. And there was a joke, and I'll tell you, I don't want to say it on it because they're very intense about that stuff. But, I mean, no one laughed. It was so uncomfortable that it was just like, oh, God, like, this is in the show? Like, you're doing this? And then, like, I went to the employee preview, I was like, okay, so that's gone. So it is interesting. And I want to round this out to a question. We're going to the event, and I do 3 categories each year that I do a full ranking, but the 3 that I look for, I do before I go and after I go. So I'm going to throw it to you for this, and then I'll give you mine. 2 of them are kind of tricky. Your most anticipated house, your least anticipated house, and then your most intriguing house, which, again, kind of sounds like most anticipated, but it's this one could come out and, this could be, if that makes sense. So, because that's typically how I do when I end an event. I say this was my favorite, this is my least favorite, but this was the most unique for me, something like that. So
yeah, well, last year it was pretty clear cut. My 2 really favorite houses, it's actually not that clear cut now that I start thinking about it. Aliens versus Predator, and I really liked the Walking Dead house, but the Cannibal house was really intriguing. That thing that you were talking about this year, just looking at it. Just from all the hype, it's got to be an American Werewolf in London. That for me, it's been hyped up so much that, I'm walking into that with huge expectations, and sometimes that's not a good thing. That me and Danny always talk about the anticipation, that you think it's going to be awesome because everyone says it's awesome, and then it just doesn't live up to it because you're like, well, what the hell are people talking about? I would say that one's probably my most anticipated. The one I'm kind of intrigued by, because we were talking about it before, is the Alice in Wonderland. And we haven't really touched upon it at all tonight. And
No.
it's one of those concepts that could turn out really, really good. It's probably going to be in 3D, right? Is what the word on the street is.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that could be kind of cool, actually. And to be honest with you, to throw one more thing, we'll probably talk about Hollywood at a later date because we're already running long here. But at Hollywood, This Is the End is my haunt. I freaking love that movie, and people are like up in arms over it. They're like, this is stupid. This is going to be terrible. And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to book my plane to California to go see that stupid thing. Like, James Franco. Costa-net hates him, thinks he's not funny. I think he's hysterical in everything he does.
Shout out to Costa-net.
Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Do you have a least anticipated house at the Orlando?
The thing is I know so little about The Walking Dead. It's cliche at this point. It usually turns out to be a pretty decent house. The thing is, last year it was a really good house because of its length. It went on forever.
Yes.
This year, I don't feel like they're going to do that this year. They're putting it in a sprung tent for all intents and purposes, or is that in one of the? I can't tell on the map. Is that a sprung tent or?
I think that's Parade. That'll be
the parade house. So it's
it's going back to.
It's not going to have the length on it. More likely than not, it could, right? Because they might use both parade houses.
Yeah, it could. They could use both sides.
Yeah. So who knows? But I would say that one. And all the rest of them look pretty good for the most part. Scream is one of those interesting ones because it has some scenes in it. I just don't know. The one criticism I would give to Halloween last year is mostly just people popping out at you. There wasn't that diversity of scare that you like to see. It was people popping, and I kind of feel that Scream, if done, would be done that same way. So maybe that would be the one that I would probably.
That's fair.
Say maybe.
Oh, that's a good point.
How about you? What are you looking at?
It's tough because I thought I knew until the rumor of Run returning, which is a house that I just always wanted to do. There's no way in this day and age that it's going to be the original concept of where you actually have to run at the end and he's chasing you. I would love for that to happen. The character behind that house had been cut the year it was supposed to be an icon. So I'm just really excited for, that whole thing. But that's not on the list, unfortunately. I just wanted to acknowledge that house. Most anticipated house, me and a friend, Ryan Houts. If you're listening, shout out to you because we are both unbelievably excited for Insidious. He is more excited than I am, but we have both every year. He's just been, is Insidious coming over yet? Is it going to come over from Hollywood yet? When do we get Insidious? It's finally here. I think it's one of the most solid horror franchises our generation has. They're creepy, they're great, and after a dead end a few years ago, Halloween Horror Nights finally honed in on the paranormal house. So I think it could be terrifying. So I'm really excited for Insidious. That's my most anticipated. Least anticipated, I mean, I'm not going to say anything other than Walking Dead. Get it out of here. I'm done with it. And you talked about how it went on forever last year. Yeah, it truly did go on forever. I was like, oh, my God, get me out of here. Like, I would rather be in any other house at this point. I will say it had some cool scenes. It had the finale. And the one thing that is a benefit of that house is it has, the AMC's Walking Dead. So they have the money to put in some of the best facades we've seen on houses in a while. This year they're talking about the flooded bank scene, which could be unbelievable if done really well, and that's something that house has always done well is the shock and size, the prison scenes, yada, yada. I'm still over it. I'd rather see something else. That's my least. And I have to agree with you. My most intriguing, and I think it's going to sneak up on people, is the Alice in Wonderland house. A lot of people have already written it off, and they're like, that's so like, really? Why? Like, Alice, it's so, and if it's, I told Andy this earlier. I love 3D houses. I used to hate them. I thought they were gimmicky. I thought they were stupid. Halloween Horror Nights changed my opinion on them, especially Penn and Teller. That was probably one of the best combined elements of a haunted house, of a Halloween Horror Nights house and a 3D house. I didn't really care for the one the next year, and I'm glad they took a break off. But I think Alice in Wonderland is just going to be they're going to go crazy with it, and I can't wait for it. So those are going to be my 3, and I hopefully I'm surprised by things when the event starts. So, but again, like you said, there's so many good. I know I'm going to love Anniversary House. I know I'm going to love American Werewolf. I know I'm going to love Freddy vs. Jason. So it's a solid year, and we'll talk about Hollywood once they start releasing a few more details. Because right now, I mean, half of our event is the Hollywood event, aside from what would be my most anticipated house, which is Crimson Peak, because Del Toro is one of my favorite directors. His movies are beautiful and terrifying when they want to be. So I'm really jealous that they get that house.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, I think we'll wrap it up here for tonight. You've listened to us talk for long enough. It's a great event. I can't, I'm really hoping to make it down there this year for 25 for the anniversary. It should be a lot of fun. And like we said, in the next few episodes of this show, we're going to be talking about Hollywood. We got a lot of great announcements out of Busch Gardens that are a little bit intriguing.
Yeah.
And pretty soon we're going to be hearing out of all of the Cedar Fair parks as well. So you'll get a good mix of all the different parks here. We're not going to exclusively focus on Horror Nights, but it is the biggest event, so we dedicate an entire show to it.
Yeah.
But we will be looking at, Busch Gardens coming up really soon. If Hollywood doesn't start announcing a little quicker, I think Busch Gardens might be our next show. Cause we got the whole, we have the whole, slate for that one. So that's good.
Oh yeah. And they kind of asserted themselves this year with that commercial, that promo. I mean, honestly, probably one of the best haunt promos I've seen since, I'd have to say, the Bloody Mary commercial for Halloween Horror Nights. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
If you haven't seen that commercial, it is on our YouTube channel, so you can find it on there. Go check it out there. And as you're on the YouTube channel, you might as well just subscribe to get all the latest from COASTER.net. So both haunts and roller coasters, theme park, and everything in there. So you get the updates, you get the emails. You'll be able to see when our new stuff comes out immediately. As always, we thank you for joining us here on Hauntoverse Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Brian Bass from Nashville, Tennessee.
And as always, scare on, Scare Warriors. Oh, very nice. Very nice.